everybody. Welcome back to Outdoors and Country Living. Today is tomato day. I am going to start preserving our harvest of tomatoes out of the garden this year. I was a little scared about the weather this morning when I woke up. It was dark and rainy, but the weather did break enough around 8 or 9 o'clock this morning where I could run out to the garden and pick about 1.5 bushels of fresh tomatoes to get started on our tomato processing this year. So I'm excited to get that started. I think this is one of the things that we do can and put away that does take a little more time just because of all the extra steps that are involved. It's not hard by any means, it's pretty simple, but I'm going to show you today how we can tomatoes here at our place. Let's get started. Here in the kitchen sink, I've already taken the stems off of the tomatoes and given them a good wash. They were quite muddy since it rained this morning. But the first thing we need to do is take out the stem area where it was attached to the tomato plant. And I just use a paring knife. Just kind of cut around it in a circle and it usually pops out. And I'm just going to use this to throw them in for now. We're here. I'm not so worried about these bad spots. You could cut them out with a knife, but usually it'll pull off once we take the skins off. So not overly concerned. I'm just gonna core all of these tomatoes and place them over here in these containers that I have set out. Once we get them all cored, then we will start skinning the tomatoes. And here in this pot, I've got water heating up, and we're gonna scald the tomatoes in there to get the skins off. It's easier if you do set them down on a surface so you can spin it around. Like I said, there's multiple steps to this process. It's not hard, it just takes some time. I guarantee you it's well worth it. We eat a lot of chili soup here at our house and vegetable soup. So this is one garden item that we tend to go through a lot of each fall and winter. They make special tools, you know, to core your tomatoes. I just prefer a paring knife. I don't need all the little fancy gadgets. Most of the time they don't work like they're supposed to anyway. Now this bad spot, I'll probably go ahead and just slice off. Don't have to, but as pale as it is around there, the skin's probably not gonna come off too well anyway. So we'll just get rid of that. And like that, I'm not worried about. The more ripe your tomatoes are, the easier the skins will come off. So keep that in mind when you're picking. I'm going to do just canned tomatoes in their own juice today. We normally do tomato juice as well. I normally don't mess too much with tomato sauce. I have done it in the past, but I find it's easiest just to crack open a jar of tomatoes in their own juice and mash them up and make my own sauce if I need it. I'm going to keep going on these till I get the sink done, and I will be back. Okay, the water in this pot is hot and ready to start blanching the tomatoes. You're gonna want a fairly good sized pot. If you do the amount of tomatoes that I'm doing today, you're gonna need a substantial sized pot. So this is one of my old water bath canners that I'm using to blanch these tomatoes. And I normally put several in at a time because I like to try to get this process done as efficiently as possible. So we're gonna go ahead and load up this pot with tomatoes. These are just the cored tomatoes that we did earlier. And we're gonna let them sit in here for 30, 60, 70 seconds until the skins start to crack. And that's an indicator that they'll fall off and peel off really nicely. And I'm actually gonna use my kitchen sink as my cold water bath. So you want some cold water. Some people use ice water, but I find just using cold water out of the tap works just as nice. And you don't deplete all of your ice out of your refrigerator. I just use this device to drop them in. You don't want to drop them in just out of your hand, so you're likely to scald yourself. Some canning books will tell you not to take the stems out, or the cores, whatever you want to call them, before you do this. But I find that it's easier if you do remove them first because the skins peel off and then you don't have to worry about trying to core a soft tomato. Like I said, I do a lot all at once and I'll kind of pick through them and decide who needs to come out first. So once they come out of this hot blanch pot, we're gonna drop them right into this cold water, and then we will take the skins off of them, and I'll place them in another stock pot for now till we get them all skinned. I want to show you. See how this skin is starting to peel? That's good. We'll plop that into our cold water here. This one's the same way. See how that's just pulling right off of there? Here's another one. It's nice. It just pulls right off of there. That's just gonna pull right off of there. Now just by using the cold water in the sink, I will have to change it probably with each batch that I put through here. I've had to purchase ice in the past when I do this, so I just decided to use cold water, and that works nicely. And you don't have the expense of buying the ice and the hassle of going and getting it. I tend to utilize my kitchen sinks a lot. I use it for canning processes. Keeps the mess in the kitchen sink and can clean it up pretty easy. The cold water helps stop the cooking process so the tomatoes don't continue to become a mushy mess. So that's the reason for the cold water. Or ice water. If you want to use ice water, that's fine too. You'll find that each person who does home canning does a little bit different. There's no right or wrong, I don't think. We all come to the same end product. We're going to start peeling these tomatoes. So with the peeling process, you just want to grab the skins and pull it off. The tomatoes are slippery, so hold on to them. But then there's our peeled tomato. You want to make sure you have a scrap bowl to put your skins in. And then over here, I have a stock pot that I'm gonna put the whole tomatoes in. Just wanna make sure you get all the skins off. The skins just pull off nice and easy, usually. You'll have some trouble ones, but for the most part, not bad. Once we get all these peeled, then we will quarter them, and then they will go into the jars after that. But let's get these all peeled and quartered, and then we'll worry about the jars. If there's little spots in the tomato that you don't like, just trim them out like that. They're just gonna get chopped up, so they don't have to be pretty. Keep going. I promise you it's worth it. I'm gonna keep working. I'll be back. Now that all of the tomatoes have been peeled, or the skins removed, we're gonna start quartering them for the jars. So depending on the size, I may quarter them, or I may cut them into sixths, or I may just start carving away at them. Anyway, I'm gonna put my chopped tomatoes in this other stock pot. I like to do this in my hand because when you cut tomatoes on a cutting board, they're very messy. And I constantly had to keep stopping and cleaning off the cutting board, drying up the counter, and so forth. So I found this is what works best for me. Just very carefully cut the tomatoes. And hopefully I didn't grab a knife that Tom just sharpened recently, which is often the case. But if you do much with knives in the kitchen, you kind of know your limitations, so just be careful. You don't have to listen to me. You can make a mess with your cutting board. I don't have to clean up your mess. They don't have to be pretty for me. They're just gonna get shoved into jars and smashed all together anyway. So just kind of cut them haphazardly. Anyway, you're gonna do this until you get through all of your tomatoes, which for me is gonna take a little while. But again, I do it over my kitchen sink or in my kitchen sink. The cleanup is easy. And if you happen to make a giant mess, no big deal. I've never cut myself doing this, by the way. Tomatoes are all chopped up. We're gonna start putting them in jars now. I like to use my hand. I'm gonna hold my jar right over the top of my pot of tomatoes. I'm not even gonna mess with a canning funnel right now because it just gets in the way. So we're just gonna fill these. And then it'll get to a point here where I'm gonna start smashing them in there. And that'll help create the juice. And I'm gonna fill them just like so to the bottom of the neck here. I'm just gonna set it over here on this cookie sheet. Since there's tomato juice on the jars, I like to keep it as clean as possible because tomatoes are very messy and can be very sticky. So we'll just keep filling all these jars. You can use a spoon if you want, if you like to be a little bit neater, but I find this is faster. And when you do bulk quantities like I do, you don't like to spend a lot of time filling your jars and being nice and neat. I'm gonna add a couple more to this one. Once I get them all filled, then I'm gonna take a butter knife, just a table knife, and stick down in them to get any air pockets out. I don't use that fancy canning tool. I don't even have one, never purchased one. I just use a knife. You could use a sharp knife, but I just use like a table knife, butter knife, we call it. I try to fit as many in each jar as I can. I don't count my tomatoes or weigh them. I just start working them and we get what we get. If there's any juice left over, then I'll can that as well. Or put it in the refrigerator and drink it within the next couple of days. Here's where I'm gonna take just a table knife or butter knife and just poke down into each jar, get any air bubbles that might be down in there out. This is a cold pack method. These tomatoes are not hot. My jars are not hot. So when I put them in the water bath canner, I want to make sure my water is not hot. If you put cold jars into hot water, you're going to have some glassy tomatoes because your jars will bust. Some people add the lemon juice in the bottom. I tend to add it on top. I don't think it really matters. Some people might say it does, but to me it doesn't. So once I get all this, the air pockets out, then we will go through and add a tablespoon of lemon juice to each jar. And then we'll clean the rims. These are going to process in the water bath canner for 45 minutes. All right, lemon juice it is. This is just, I use the Real Lemon brand. I've tried generic brands and I think they have a weird taste. It might be a psychological thing, I don't know. My bulk canning book says to add 2 tablespoons of lemon juice. I have never done that. I've only added just 1. So you can add 2 if you want, but I'm just using 1. At this stage, if you want to add some salt, you would add a teaspoon to each quart. But we eat a low sodium diet by choice, so I omit the salt when I'm canning. I'll add it a little bit when I'm cooking, but all right. I'm gonna get a damp paper towel and we'll clean up the jars here. You just wanna make sure the rims of these jars are nice and clean so your seals adhere and you don't lose any of your tomatoes or have to use them rather soon. All right, now we're gonna add the lids and the rings. I'm gonna stick this one in the refrigerator so I don't dump it. Just tighten these fingertip tight. I'm gonna grab a Sharpie here and I'm just gonna put an X on these so I know that they're the juice and not the tomatoes. I should be able to tell when they're all done, but just in case. All right, here's 7 quarts in my water bath canner, number 1. So we're just gonna add some water to this. You wanna cover the jars by 1 to 2 inches of water. Again, this is cool to slightly warm tap water going in because the jars and the tomatoes are cold. I'm gonna go ahead and turn this burner on. I've got it on another portable burner, I went and got the second one because I'm gonna be running 2 water canners. We decided to switch out our old enamel coated water canners for these really nice ball stainless steel water canners. I absolutely love them. They'll last my entire canning career, that's for sure. There we go. All right, we'll put the lid on and wait for that to come to a boil. Let's go take care of the other one. Here's the second water canner over here on our stove. Do the same thing with the water on this one. Go ahead and start the burner. And let's get some more water. This ought to do it. Okay. That looks good. Put the lid on this one. And once they come to a rolling boil, that's when I will start the timers for 45 minutes. While I'm waiting on the water canners to come to a boil, I've started working on another batch of tomatoes. But this batch has some of the Roma tomatoes in it, so I wanted to show you how I take the tops off of those where it attached to the plant. I just take my knife and slice off a little bit of the top. That way you're not going around and around, because these aren't very deep. So I just kind of core them out with the knife. I'll come back to you once the canners are going. We're at a rolling boil. I'm going to start the timer for 45 minutes. 45 minutes is up, so we're going to go ahead and lift out the jars. I went ahead and lifted the jars up. I'm going to let them sit here a couple of minutes. They tend to hiss and sometimes spew out some tomato. Doesn't look like that's happening right now, but it's possible. That way the mess stays in the pot. I just want to show you here the 2 jars of tomato juice that I got out of the first batch. You can see the separation. Once these jars cool, I can shake them up and the whole thing will be red again and look like tomato juice. All the tomato pulp up here will blend in. Right now it looks a little bit goofy, but this is normal. And you can see over here on the tomatoes as well. Once they cool, I'll just give them a little shake and they'll look normal. Thanks for stopping by my country kitchen again and making canned homegrown tomatoes with me. I hope you are able to can some tomatoes to enjoy them in soups this fall and winter with your family. If you have any comments or questions, feel free to leave those. But we're just going to let these sit here and cool down and then they'll seal. I'll label them and put them downstairs in our food supply stock for future use. Thanks again for watching. Don't forget to share our videos, like them, and subscribe to our channel because we've got more work to do. That means more videos coming out. Everyone take care. We'll see you later.